Imagine waking up at 4 in the morning to drive a refrigerated truck full of hijacked frozen shrimp across the state line. You are doing this because a 45-year-old man named Jimmy the Boot told you it would show. Initiative. Hollywood wants you to believe that being in the mafia is a glamorous life of silk suits and opera music. In reality, it is mostly just a high-stakes corporate internship where the middle management can legally set your car on fire. Welcome to your new career path. To even get your foot in the door, you have to be an associate. An associate is basically the unpaid intern of the criminal underworld. You do not get health insurance. You do not get a 401k match. What you do get is the privilege of sitting in the back of a freezing pork store in North Jersey for 9 hours, waiting for someone to ask you to get them a Diet Cola. You have to prove you are useful, which usually means figuring out how to steal things that are incredibly inconvenient to move. You are out there hijacking shipments of generic cigarettes and half pallets of designer sneakers that are all left-footed. If you get caught by the police, you go to jail, and everyone at the social club forgets your name until your sentence is over, if you succeed. Jimmy the Boot takes 80% of the profit and tells you that you have great energy. It is exactly like working at a tech startup, except the ping pong table is covered in blood. You spend years in this limbo doing favors for guys who look like thumbs wearing leather jackets. You have to learn the names of 50 different men who are all named Tony Anthony, or Tony 2 times. You have to remember which Tony is currently mad at which Anthony, so you do not sit at the wrong plastic table outside the cafe. One wrong move and you are back to stealing copper pipes from abandoned construction sites. But let us say you survive the grind. You did not talk to the cops when you got pulled over with a trunk full of unregistered power tools. You did not skim any cash off the top of the illegal poker game in the basement of the bakery. You have proven that you are completely Italian, specifically on your father's side, because the organization values tradition above all else. Suddenly, you get the call. You are told to dress up and show up at an undisclosed location, which turns out to be the basement of a suburban home that smells intensely of garlic and damp drywall. This is your official corporate onboarding ceremony. You walk into a dimly lit room filled with older men who are looking at you like you are a spreadsheet that finally balanced. There is a gun on the table, a knife, and a small picture of a Catholic saint. The boss takes your finger and pricks it with a knife until you bleed. He drips your blood onto the picture of the saint, sets the paper on fire, and drops it into your cupped hands. You are now standing in a basement, holding a burning piece of religious memorabilia while trying to look like a tough guy. This is the moment you swear the sacred oath of omerta, the code of absolute silence. You promise that if you burn like this saint, you will never betray the family. You also swear to never look at another made man's wife, which is a very dramatic way to ensure nobody ruins the annual summer cookout. Once the fire goes out and you wash the ash off your hands, the atmosphere immediately shifts. Everyone hugs you. Someone hands you a glass of anisette. You are officially a made man, an untouchable piece of criminal infrastructure. From this day forward, nobody can touch you without permission from the boss. If a regular civilian punches you at a bar, it is a police report. If another made man punches you without permission, it is a mandatory retirement package delivered to the back of his head by his own cousin. You feel like a king. You buy a gold watch, a leather jacket that makes a lot of noise when you walk, and a Cadillac that gets 6 miles to the gallon. Then Monday rolls around, and you realize you just entered the most stressful pyramid scheme on Earth. Being a made man does not mean you get a steady salary. It means you have just been promoted to an independent contractor who has to pay rent to the boss every single week. You are now a soldier, and you are given a crew or a specific territory to shake down. Every dollar you make from sports betting, loan sharking, or selling counterfeit olive oil is subject to a heavy corporate tax. You have to give a fixed percentage, usually around 15%, up to your capo regime. The capo takes his cut and hands the rest up to the underboss, who then delivers a massive envelope to the boss. It is the ultimate corporate ladder. Except instead of selling essential oils, you are selling the vague threat of physical violence. If you have a bad week because the local football team actually won their game and ruined your illegal betting operation, nobody cares. The capo does not accept market fluctuations as an excuse for a light envelope. You cannot go to HR and complain that your quarterly goals were unrealistic. If your envelope is light 2 weeks in a row, the boss starts looking at you like you are a liability. And liabilities in this industry do not get laid off with a severance package. They just disappear during a routine trip to a landfill in Staten Island. So you work harder. You start spending 16 hours a day running numbers and trying to convince local restaurant owners that they need your specific brand of linen supply service. Your life becomes an endless series of meetings in places that have terrible lighting. You spend a bizarre amount of time sitting in diners eating cold home fries while whispering about garbage collection routes. You start to realize that the glamorous life is mostly just extreme logistical anxiety mixed with high cholesterol. You are constantly stressed about the competition of the economy and whether or not the guy pouring your espresso is secretly working for the government. And the rules do not make it any easier. The Mafia has an incredibly specific internal handbook that is strictly enforced to keep everyone from shooting each other over parking spaces. For example, you can never introduce yourself directly to another made man. If you walk into a social club and see a guy you do not know, you cannot just walk up and say hello like a normal human being. A third party who knows both of you has to formally introduce you. If he says, "This is a friend of mine," that means the guy is just a regular civilian, a nobody you can cheat or ignore. But if he says, "This is a friend of ours," that means the guy is also a made man. Suddenly, you have to be on your absolute best behavior, because insulting a friend of ours is a fast track to an early grave. The social anxiety of this is off the charts. Imagine standing next to a guy at a buffet for 40 minutes, both of you staring at the big CD in absolute silence, because Tony has not walked into the room yet to clear your identities. You also have to be notoriously punctual. If the capo says a meeting is at 2 o'clock, you show up at 1:45. Being late to a mafia meeting is not like being late to an office Zoom call where you can just blame your internet connection. Being late means everyone in the room assumes you are either talking to the FBI or planning an ambush. You will find yourself driving 90 miles an hour through a residential neighborhood just because. You do not want your friends to think you are a federal informant. You are also strictly forbidden from stealing from other members of the family. You can steal from the government, you can steal from corporations, and you can steal from the guy who runs the pharmacy down the street. But if you skim a single dollar from another made man's illegal dice game, the entire system turns against you. It is a world built entirely on a strange paradox of absolute loyalty and total paranoia. You are surrounded by your best friends, the men who stood by you at your wedding, the men who bought your kids Christmas presents. And yet, every time one of them asks you to step out into the alley for a private chat, your heart drops into your shoes. You start analyzing every single sentence your friends say to you. When Sal says he likes your new jacket, does he actually like the jacket? Or is he subtly hinting that you are spending too much money and hiding profits? You cannot trust anyone, but you have to pretend you trust everyone completely. It is an exhausting mental gymnastic routine that you have to perform every single day while eating heavy pasta. Then things get even worse. Because just when you think you have mastered the internal politics of the family, the federal government changes the entire game. For decades, the mafia operated with relative ease because the laws were not designed to handle secret organizations. If a soldier killed someone, only the soldier went to jail, while the boss sat in his mansion eating imported figs. But in 1970, the government introduced the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, also known as RICO. RICO is functionally translated to, "We can arrest your entire group chat," because Tony could not stop bragging on a landline. Suddenly, the government does not need to prove that the boss pulled the trigger. They just need to prove that the boss ran the enterprise that allowed the trigger to be pulled. The FBI starts treating the mafia like a Fortune 500 company that they desperately want to liquidate. They stop trying to catch you in the act of stealing a truck. Instead, they spend 3 years installing high-tech listening devices in the fluorescent light fixtures of your favorite social club. Your life completely transforms into a low-budget spy movie. You can no longer talk about business inside a building. You can no longer talk about business inside a car. You spend your winters walking around public parks in the freezing rain, whispering about loan sharking rates while trying to look like two normal guys just enjoying nature. You start having conversations in the bathroom, with the sink running at full blast, the shower on, and the toilet flushing repeatedly. You are basically trying to run a criminal empire while living inside a water park. The FBI is listening to thousands of hours of tapes, and most of it isn't even about crime. They are listening to you complain about your acid reflux. They are listening to you argue with your cousin about who makes the best meatballs in Brooklyn. They are tracking your dental appointments and your grocery lists. The paranoia grows until it becomes a physical weight in the room. Every time a new car parks across the street from your house, you spend 4 hours staring through the blinds with a pair of binoculars. You start looking at your own grandmother's television set, wondering if the KGB or the FBI put a microphone in the knobs. The pressure starts to crack the absolute loyalty that the organization was built on. Before RICO, going to jail meant doing a 5-year stretch while the family paid your mortgage and took care of your kids. After RICO, the feds start throwing around sentences of 80 to 100 years in a maximum security prison with no chance of parole. Suddenly, the sacred oath of the burning saint starts to look like a very bad financial decision. Guys who used to look like concrete blocks start weeping in the interrogation room when they realize they will never see the outside of a federal penitentiary again. This is the moment when the system completely breaks down. Your best friend, the guy who pricked his finger right next to you, gets caught with a trunk full of illegal substances. The feds offer him a choice. He can either spend the rest of his life in a concrete box, or he can wear a tiny microphone under his polo shirt and invite you out for a nice steak dinner. He chooses the steak dinner. Now, every social interaction is a potential landmine. You go to a diner with your associate, and you notice he is sweating profusely, even though the air conditioning is on high. You notice he keeps leaning forward when you speak, as if he wants his chest to get a better recording of your voice. You realize that the casual question he just asked about the warehouse robbery wasn't a question at all. It was a scripted prompt written by a federal agent named Bob, who is currently sitting in a surveillance van down the street, drinking lukewarm coffee. You have to answer the question with absolute care, using vague metaphors and pretending you have never even heard of a warehouse. The stress is so intense that you actually start to miss the days when you were just stealing copper pipes and getting yelled at by Jimmy the Boot. Which brings us to your final performance review in this corporate life cycle. In the Mafia, there are really only 2 retirement plans available to you, and neither of them involves a gold watch or a condo in Florida. Plan A is that you get arrested by the feds because your cousin decided he wanted to see his kids grow up more than he wanted to keep your secrets. You end up in a federal court, watching your own inner circle sit at the prosecution table wearing nice suits and reading from a transcript of your worst days. You are sent to a maximum security facility where your daily schedule is dictated by a man with a clipboard who does not care about your family tree. Plan B is that your own crew decides you have become too much of a liability because you are too, stressed out and might crack under pressure. They invite you out to a celebratory dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant with excellent reviews. They tell you that the boss is going to promote you to captain. You sit down, you order the veal. And right before the appetizers arrive, someone steps out of the bathroom behind you. It is a remarkably consistent career trajectory that almost always ends in a dramatic final scene that nobody actually enjoys. If you are incredibly lucky, you might get a third option, which is turning into a government witness yourself. You sign the paperwork. You tell the feds everything you know, and they put you into the witness protection program. They take away your name, your history, and your leather jackets. They move you to a quiet suburb in the middle of Nebraska, where nobody has ever heard of an espresso machine. Your new name is Gary, and your new job is managing the assistant managers at a patio furniture store. You spend the rest of your days sitting on a porch looking at a cornfield, wondering how you went from a feared enforcer in New York to a guy who knows way too much about seasonal discounts on outdoor umbrellas. You miss the food. You miss the noise. You miss the feeling of importance that came with being a friend of ours. But then you look at the peaceful sky. You realize nobody is currently trying to wiretap your lawnmower, and you take a sip of your terrible supermarket coffee. So what about you? Are you the kind of person who could survive the unpaid shrimp internship? Or would you crack the second the Saint card caught on fire? Let me know down there. Ultimately, the real history of this lifestyle shows that the movies got it wrong. The real mafia wasn't a grand tragedy of honorable men. It was just grueling, stressful, and violent cycle that left nothing behind but empty bank accounts and broken families. It turns out that a regular 9-to-5 job with a difficult boss and a bad health plan is actually a pretty good deal compared to the alternative. At least at your current office when you have a terrible quarterly review. They just take away your corporate credit card. They don't usually ask you to take a permanent walk into a New Jersey swamp.